Hello everybody and welcome to Siili Talks. Today the topic is going to be AI and we're going to have a really interesting discussion around that, particularly on how you can improve your business and every aspect of your business with AI, but also we're going to conclude with a new tool that we are introducing to the Finnish market. So very exciting. But before we dig into that, I think we should have a round of introductions.
Hi, I'm Jarkko. I'm VP Innovation at Siili. Very keen on designing and applying AI to different business challenges.
Hi, I'm Caroline. I'm currently working as a lead service designer in Siili, and I'm excited today to spend this time with my brilliant colleagues to open up the topic, how might AI and data help your business excel?
And hi, I'm Alexander. I'm a senior data scientist here at Siili, and I'm also really excited to hear what my colleagues have to say from both business and design perspectives.
And my name's Simon. I'm Group Creative Director here at Siili. And yes, very excited to hear the discussion because I really feel I am in the company of geniuses today. So let's get into this. I think it's really important to talk about how AI is growing and how organizations are increasingly adopting AI into their practices. And I want to touch on business successes, ones we've experienced ourselves, but one we've also heard about within the environment out there, the application of AI specifically. And I think another key point we need to talk about is ethics and the law and forthcoming movements around that would be a really important topic to discuss. But I think to kick off, it's really interesting to cite one example which Business Finland have been using with regards to AI. So let's hear a little bit more about that.
In 2020, Business Finland actually predict that if companies in Finland start using AI as their business solution, it predicts that 3% of GDP per capita growth instead of a 0.8 as we currently seeing. That's a lot to promise for the market.
At the same time, what I heard just a few weeks back from Outi Keskiainen, who she's been running the AI program in Finland. She mentioned that during the program period, I think it's 4 years, they've seen the market already here in Finland to be like 500 million euros. So it means that companies are really, let's say, putting efforts on adapting the AI.
That's true. If I may add on a small survey, I think it was done in 2019, and there they find what was the reason to hold business invest into the AI area. Actually, the biggest reason find was lacking of common understanding for what is AI, what can AI do for the business. And that gap between understanding, we also see in our real work, how business sees AI is quite different than how technical people seeing it. For us ordinary people thinking about AI, we may not think AI as a big umbrella term. Quite commonly, AI means even a bit of a scary solution, or people who may know closer, then it's more of a hype topic such as machine learning, natural language processing, deep learning, and media coverage with a lot of negative, scary news too. But in fact, AI is already embedded in our day-to-day life, right? Chatbot is AI, and AI can bring us simple recommendations, or when you use Amazon or eBay, there is also AI solution embedded. Even in our common used emails, Google claimed that they have 99.9% of the spam email were sorted out due to the implementation of the AI in the Gmail. So that's already something very close to us, this solution.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think sort of taking that into account, I think the interesting question is, what is the differentiating factor between successful and unsuccessful AI projects? And I think one of the factors that we've identified is the fact that unsuccessful companies tend to run their AI projects in isolation of the rest of the business. Whereas in successful companies, you have people who bring in both the business perspective, who can tell what are the important business cases for solutions in order to actually get some return on investment. And then you have a design perspective as well, where you can design the AI solution in terms of how people will use it. And we can see when this is missing, for instance, in a case from 2016 when Microsoft introduced a Twitter chatbot called Tay. And the Twitter chatbot, people could interact with it in natural language on Twitter, and it worked technically perfectly. And it was really impressive insofar as it was able to learn from the interaction that it received. The lack of design here is apparent in the fact that none of the creators of the AI solution took into account the fact that people would abuse the Twitter bot. So over time, people would interact with the Twitter bot and promote different kinds of radical opinions. And then as the AI learned, it would begin to parrot out those opinions and then produce awful things about women's place in work and different racial groups and so forth. So it's really important to have the design perspective there. And then finally, there's the user perspective, because at the end of the day, some user is going to be using the AI solution that you're introducing. And if they're not willing or trusting of the solution, then there's no business case anymore. So yeah, the user perspective is the final one.
Absolutely. So human centricity, all important.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. I could add on from there a bit, if that's okay.
Yes.
So then we were thinking how exactly we could bring this human centricity. If you think about Tim Brown, who are the person who originally proposed the term of design thinking, that he was stating that everyone can be a designer, not just designer. So everyone who are part of designing the concept can act as a designer, taking care of the aspects that we may think of. So then when we think about how to bring the AI to the business field, I see it's very important to set a goal first before implementing anything, especially not a long-term commitment yet, because we are all in a learning path. So instead, mark that goal and follow up with small experimentals towards that goal. During that time, we can enrich the conversation happening across disciplines, making sure that we gain a deeper understanding in our business context. How can AI and data serve to our business? And meanwhile, it is much better for business to commit less at once. We are entitled to fail. We can learn from this experiment, and then we can do better for the next round.
Yep. I think about the possible pitfalls we have heard, the very common used to be that we did the proof of concepts which were not useful. I think it's always useful if you can iterate and learn along you go. However, I say that the movement is currently so that there's a lot more focus on the possible value and not purely on a tech side, like proving the technology as it's there, and the human centricity which was mentioned. I need to tell one example, which is from the airport context, and we had their exercise and the hypothesis like how to predict, or is it possible to predict the flight delays based on the weather conditions, especially the severe weather conditions we face here in Finland, and it's a very researched topic for decades. We were able to come up with very promising results because we had access to all the data. But the challenge was then when we went out there to discuss with the actual users, like now we have the predictions for the delays. We clearly noticed that it wasn't actually the value wasn't in the delay. It's a common business metric to follow up on the daily level, but the people in the operations would more prefer understand the throughput, like how the throughput looks for the next 15 minutes, 1 hour, 6 hours, etc. So that was one of the learning, like how to involve, or the benefits of involving both the context and the human understanding.
Yeah, sort of building on that, I think, Caroline, earlier you mentioned the fact that people tend to have these sort of perhaps misleading views of AI and fears around AI. And I think one of the major fears that's been popularized by in AI is the fact that it would replace the human in the loop. Whereas research shows and our experiences corroborate the fact that the successful companies are those who try to use AI to augment their existing employees and empower those employees to create value, not those who want to completely replace the employees. And I think sort of behind all of this is the fact that it's really easy to calculate the value of a solution when you're just subtracting the amount of money you're paying existing employees. But I think the promising way, even if it's difficult to estimate in economic terms, is to look at how we can empower the users.
Some great examples there, and I should point out that there are further great examples in our Data and AI white paper. Okay, so we've talked about how to embrace AI and bring it into your organization and the real benefits of bringing it in. But let's get to, let's cut the chase. How can we really capitalize on data? How can we really put quality data to work? And what does it look like from a bird's eye view in terms of the opportunities that we can find with AI and the processes we can improve and even products and services that we can enhance?
That's a very good question, indeed. If you think about today's data, there is a saying that the data is a modern currency. So what does it mean if you think that data is like a modern mining process? Data is the raw materials you have here, and then it's your task to allocating it and refine it, and meanwhile assess the quality. Then from this data you might get different gems, or you may even get diamonds. Those diamonds are something truly bring value to your business. It sounds simple, but actually in practice it's quite difficult, really linked business metrics with the data metric. How to make it happen? For instance, we often talk about two approaches, bottom up or top to down. When you have a bundle of data and look into the data based on what data tells you, insights you generated, and then you make a fact-based decision, it's not a new practice. A lot of national organizations are doing that. But then when coming to the business, even maybe smaller firms who have invested already several digital platforms, they have some data in-house, what they should do with the data. And we see in Siili from our practice is while you have some available data, also look from above, try to understand what is your business vision, and then create a data strategy. How do you want to use the data? And what form of strategy is the value chain? What are the key steps included? By looking at these value chains, meanwhile understand people, user involved, then mapping out the user journey and the system used in this user journey, and then link with the available data together to take a look how exactly this data could serve the journey, could serve your end user, could serve you value. That's how I see it.
Yeah, and I'd like to expand upon the point about data quality a little bit. I think a lot of businesses say that they have collected, and they have in fact collected a lot of data. But if data is the new currency, not all coins are of equal value. So indeed. I think a big part of a data project or an AI project is data exploration, where we try to understand what sort of data is available for a given solution. But a lot of companies, especially those who are unsuccessful, think that data exploration is just the sort of single phase that you do at the beginning of a project. Whereas if you want to actually put a solution into production, data quality is something that you need to ensure throughout the process and throughout the lifetime of the solution. And a sort of very prominent example of this is from last year when a real estate company called Zillow, who had been using an AI solution for pricing housing or houses. And this is a solution that they've been developing for 14 years, had to put down over $400 million in losses because the algorithm that they had designed on previous data no longer worked in the new market situation brought about by COVID. So yeah, quality assurance is something that you need to do, but you need to do it continuously throughout the lifetime of a project.
Maybe to add one more aspect related to the data, and I think it's like you may have the data, you can capitalize maybe with that data, but it might still mean that you are missing the data. And it depends, of course, how what kind of concepts you are developing and how are you applying the AI and what data the algorithm in particular use case will need. And I think we have found out also a good practice how to combine that with the opportunity mapping to assess the possible opportunities, the rough conceptual ideas, like what data will be needed there to make it happen. And through that sort of exercises, you can also do some pre-work and prepare for upcoming.
Exactly. And I guess by doing that exercise, also embrace what we call the data literacy, educate everyone in the organization, understand what they could use with the data.
Yeah.
Okay, so we mentioned earlier about our AI design sprint, and we're very excited about this because this is a first in Finland. So let's get into this and let's talk about what it is, about how you can benefit from it, about who it's for, potentially how long results will take once conducting this method with us, this tool, and really kind of who better to answer it than those who are already conducting the methodology and hear about some thoughts around, you know, who it's for, what it's for, and your experiences so far, because you've been carrying out this method already. So.
Yes, I can open up the big picture of the AI design sprint. So AI design sprint, it's a 2 weeks exercise that we carry out from zero by identifying the opportunity within the business all the way to produce an interactive web prototype. So something tangible for the business to test with their end users. And what does it include within this 2 weeks time? So first we will identify the opportunity across organizations, including the products you have. And these will be doing the exercise with the C-level decision makers. And then once we identify the key opportunity we want to grasp, then we will continue whether focus on the products that you want to improve or build, or come to improve your work process. How might you automate the work process so that you can release your employee to do more meaningful work and break the silos? After the initial business concept we formed, and then we will come to the tech check and then a prototyping making. So all of this will take weeks of time.
Yeah. You mentioned that it's possible to apply for the, let's say, existing processes or existing products, but I also highlight that it's also very applicable for the creating something new. So of course in that case we need to have the understanding what most of the customers already have about the different user needs, the business needs and the wants, basically, as a starting point.
Indeed. And to the conceptualizing phase, which will happen after the opportunity phase, that is for the development projects. Normally setup could be the creative directors and business owners, designers and technical people will do a co-creation session. And that's also reflect earlier what we mentioned. It's important to have this exercise to deepen understanding what is AI. And in this process, we're going to use the AI cards as the backbone, the main tool in the process, as you can see here. So this AI design sprint itself is not invented by Siili in-house in a couple of months. It's actually developed by a Danish consultancy, 33A. They already start experimenting it, testing it, iterated since 2017. So we have also been practicing in the field. It is so far seems a very promising approach for business to start adopting AI solution. And each cards, including a main description on the backside of the cards, also describes what are the use case for different type of AI solutions.
What I have found very useful is that I think it's very natural way to learn more about the opportunities, be it AI performing a simple task, or AI seeing something or collecting certain information for us, or even finding the bits and pieces which should be there to enable like larger scale processes, orchestrating it like we see involved within the supply chains, for example.
Yeah, exactly. The cards covers from very simple AI solutions to the very complicated one like robotics. And I'm curious, Alexander, that after the initial concept, opportunity mapping and the concept formulation within the AI design sprint, then come to the most demanding part is the tech check and the rapid prototyping. And yourself is also trained facilitator for AI design sprint. What's your take on this approach from a data scientist point of view?
I think this is a really good approach in that it formalizes many of the processes that we've already had, but it brings structure and a sort of pre-thought out structure to how to sort of go through the process, and also sort of preempt some of the difficulties that we've seen before. And Simon, you mentioned earlier on, or asked earlier on, who is the sort of target audience for an approach like this. I think what we've seen is that it's very promising obviously for those who are not very sort of developed in terms of applying AI. But in addition to that, I think we see promise also for those clients who already have some sort of maturity in AI development. Perhaps they have a chief data officer of some sort or something like this. Because even if there are people in the organization who have expertise in AI, that doesn't typically tend to extend to the entire organization. And the entire benefit of the AI design sprint is to bridge the technical experts with the rest of the society within a business.
Yeah. One very practical case is also that if you have already applied different things, you may not lack the common understanding, like how to adapt the AI, let's say, wider in the organization. And I think the AI opportunity mapping gives you a very good picture that where the opportunities lie.
Exactly.
And you can use the outcomes for making up a roadmap for you, and also prioritize the opportunities. And I think assessing the impact and assessing the viability, which is included in the process steps, is very useful for that. And even on the opportunity mapping phase, we will carry out a simple assessments to see that if it's feasible to work on.
Right,
Yeah.
and then we build upon that in the sort of later phases where we look at specific solutions and whether or not there's a business case or whether or not they're realistic from a technical perspective, and so forth.
Yeah, indeed. What I particularly like this structure of the AI design sprint is not we only assessing from the business viability point of view or technical feasibility point of view. We also look at human experiences involved, and meanwhile we add ethical aspects into assess the initial concept. I think that's crucial. Already thinking about ethical impact when we just forming the concept at very beginning. Let's also merge a better understanding what kind of impact this type of emerging technology could bring for people, for society.
Yeah, no, I think that is also very practical if your company or organization happens to have, let's say, governance models in place or already thought about that let's say your stance on the of using the AI in a responsible manner. You may have already the principles or some strategies developed. I think that is a very natural path to work on it in a practical manner.
Indeed.
I think that's really important. You can step into it at different points. I would say from my perspective, having been on the receiving end of one of these exercises, it was fascinating in terms of how quick it yielded potential concepts and potential results. The speed was really remarkable. And I think, the other thing is that, people had different levels of understanding, and yet everybody comprehended what Caroline in this case was training people. And I think it was a sort of a logical consequence of many of the things that Siili have been doing for many years, sort of building upon that and really sort of integrates well with all the other things that Siili have been and are still known for, things like the customer experience side of things and all of that. It just felt such a sort of logical consequence and a timely thing to do. So, yeah, I mean, can't recommend it enough. I thought it was a superb and really sort of innovative exercise. Okay, interesting discussion thus far, but now let's take a sneak peek at the actual AI design sprint and see how we work with the cards.
Yeah, let's do that. So now I will be facilitating a very mini session for AI design sprint. So let's have a hypothesis, the assumption challenge we want to solve. Let's say Siili often receive a lot of applications for different positions, designer, data scientist, or engineers. But challenge is that we receive a lot of irrelevant applications as well. How do we help HR to filter out those noise coming in and select the relative ones or identify the relative ones so that HR can proceed quicker for the interesting talents? First step, each of you have a deck of AI cards in front of you and go through them in a few minutes. Select the 3 cards that you find it's representing the solution that you have in your heart, in your mind to solve this challenge. If any of the cards you find is arbitrary, hard to understand, don't worry. You can flip the cards and read real business cases. How did this solution has been applied in real life? Let's put the cards in the center. Right. And we can introduce each of the cards one by one. Maybe, Jaakko, you can start.
Okay. I got an idea that this might be a bit off from the actual, let's say, challenge, but it's really closely connected. Like I think it's a very polite way to respond to the applicants, even though the journey wouldn't continue, and especially if there's lots of noise or lots of irrelevance, it is probably, and I know it's a big task. So I was thinking that the AI could find us the information according to specific characteristics. So depending on the position or the quality of the application, it could pick up those. And then we could use the AI to, this card says AI writes text. So AI could write the response to the applicant. And then the last card I picked says that AI performs simple operational tasks. So AI could then make the automated reply.
Yeah, exactly. Even the candidate doesn't fit today, it doesn't mean that he wouldn't or he or she wouldn't fit in tomorrow or in the future.
Exactly.
Good idea. Then let's take a look at what Alexander have selected here.
Sure. Actually, sort of building on what you just said about candidates being a better fit going forward, one of the things that we at Siili try to do is to try to match consultants with customer demands. So going forward, what I could see is that we have an AI that predicts what customers want and suggests to us how to serve those needs. So that's the first part, trying to predict the market. Then the second card I chose was AI finds information according to specific characteristics. So you match the characteristics that are being predicted. And then finally, the AI will make the actual match. So match a prospective candidate to what we expect to see in going forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Alexander.
I see we all are forming up, let's say, mini journeys or use cases.
Exactly.
Through the course.
Yeah, the idea is very concrete. Now let's take a look of Simon's card.
Yes, indeed. I opted for AI reads and understands written text purely because thinking of how people make applications with their CVs. And they are predominantly written text within those. Then AI performs simple internal operational tasks. Let's articulate that on a bit more here, because it doesn't just perform simple, it does perform more complex tasks. But in this case, this can really help with the sort of operations internally and how to sort of manage the process. There's so much with AI about managing process and helping to make that easy and kind of do the heavy lifting, I believe is the expression that people are using quite a lot. And then I went for AI sorts large amounts of data into groups, which this sort of categorization and segmenting of information is very important to give a kind of clear focus to those working with the information that's provided. And AI can do, an admirable job in sorting out, literally sorting out large amounts of information. So seemed like fairly sort of basic and yet quite quick fixes that can be made to really sort of streamline the operation from the start.
Right, sounds really tangible ideas, solutions. Nice. Let's put these cards together and let's take an overview. We can see that we select 3 simple cards from the orange categories. Pink category is also something quite simple to achieve, where the blue and the turquoise is a bit more complicated. Then let's now revisit the challenge we want to solve. We want to help our HR to easier identify the potential candidates that we could hire. So what kind of solution we could need now based on our current context? Let's pick 3 cards together and feel free to articulate your reason.
I think Simon made a really good case in that the cards that he chose were really to the point and sort of solving the basic situation, the basic problem that we're having right now. So I think sorting data into groups is obviously a good candidate. I think performing internal tasks in terms of sort of sending the right applications to the right people is obviously important. And then the final card that you chose was reading and understanding written text, which because we have many of the applications we get have pre-text is really important. So I think I think Simon's set was closest to the requested functionality.
Yeah, agree.
Okay, great, cool. So, and this is something that we can start with, as we don't have an AI solution yet in our HR process. Something we can experiment and try and learn in the journey. Excellent. Now we have selected 3 cards and formulate a very initial concept we have for our potential AI solution. Now I'm gonna give you some ethical cards. Altogether, we have 18 ethical cards. Go through these ethical cards and identify, pick at least one cards at least, and identify why these ethical aspects are important. And imagine and try to describe, if we haven't taken into these ethical aspects into consideration, what could be the worst scenario? And then if we do take these ethical aspects into consideration, what are the best outcomes that we are envisioning? Yeah, for this case, we can just pick one, just to showcase. Okay, Alexander, you put cards first. Do you want to?
Sure. I chose the card called Human Augmentation and Human Control. What this means, which is also explained on the card, is that during or at the end of a process, there is a person to review the decision of the AI to approve or disapprove. So there's a human in the loop. And the reason I chose this was that quite obviously HR is a process within the company that involves a lot of people who don't have control within the process apart from actually applying to the company. So it's really important that we have somebody there, because otherwise the worst case that we can imagine is something that actually happened to, say, Amazon a couple of years ago, where they introduced a system like this and then found out that it discriminated against certain groups of people systematically. And that's a PR nightmare, and also not a very good solution in sort of altogether. So yeah, having a human in the loop is really important, in my opinion.
Excellent. Yeah, very strong argument. Thank you. Jalko?
I picked up the card about the explainability and transparency, and I think the best case scenario here could be that we could use it so that we will inform the applicant also before sending the application that we have such a system in place. So it's known that we are using some parts of AI to process the applications, and then from the internal perspective, the maybe highlight the explainability on especially on the sorting, like how the data is sorted into the groups, and where maybe the limitations might be. The worst case could be that no one is actually informed about the process, or don't pay any attention on the possible issues.
Right, and we missed out potential candidates. Yeah, excellent. Then Simon, what is your card?
Yes, I went with dignity, and this is all about respect, and we've kind of touched upon this, but I think that, we get many applications, some of which may not be appropriate for the particular task at hand, or the role, as we would say. But that's not to discount that person from potential role in the future. So I think we should remember that respect is very important in this, and dignity, and be able to sort of categorize that person for the right potential task in the future, and inform them thus as well that we've done that. Really important too.
Yeah, very good thinking behind. So now with this small exercise, we already form a very simple AI solution that we could test out or interview in our HR department. And meanwhile, we take 3 ethical aspects into consideration when we're developing this concept, even into the development phase. That's about our small exercise.
An excellent discussion, I'm sure you'll agree, and one that we could really talk about all day. But I think we have to close now with some sort of parting thoughts. So really keen to hear, what parting thought do you have when coming to this?
Well, I think the central thought that I have is that just as the business solutions that we present are not built or used in isolation, they should not be created in isolation. So I think having proper communication between the relevant parties is really important.
For me, is that it's a clear evidence that we are living in a very special era, in a data-rich timing, and then learn how to use AI. It also means each of us involved or somewhat relate to this topic, we should also become AI literacy to understand the basic concept. What is AI? What kind of solution AI can provide? What is the general process to make an AI happen? And then with that knowledge, you can ask questions, and you can even raise the argument to making sure whatever we do, it's thoughtful.
Good points. Maybe I could highlight the meaning of the conceptualizing the idea and the solution, and I think that is something that will probably benefit a lot, and I'm pretty confident it will improve the results of the AI solutions. But it's easy to tap into also the ethical parts, go more deeper, do the bottom-up exercises there, validate the prototypes, etc. Before moving further on, to also avoid the biggest risks.
Very interesting takeaways. I think that we should end on the fact that we know there are people tuning in who are specifically interested in conducting AI exercises with Siili companies, but also individuals who may be keen on working at Siili. And we would welcome both parties because we are really committed to AI design development within organizations, and we need people to work with. We need partners to work with. So this is a really exciting time for us. So one way or another, we would hope you can join us. Thank you very much.
Thanks.